The book Dialed In, Do Your Best When It Matters Most, contains advice from a performance psychologist. Stay tuned to learn what's holding you back and how you can plan for better results in the future. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and this is Some Books Considered. Today, I'll talk with Dr. Dana Sinclair about Dialed In. I requested and was provided with a copy of the book, but this video is not sponsored. A little bit about the author. Dr. Dana Sinclair is a founder and partner of Human Performance International, a Toronto-based management consulting firm. As a performance psychologist, she's been working with athletes in pro hockey, baseball, basketball, football, and soccer since 2000, as well as working with high-level medical and corporate organizations. She's a registered psychologist and holds doctorates from the University of Cambridge and the University of Ottawa. And once again, she joins us to talk about Dialed In, Do Your Best When It Matters Most. Dana, welcome to Some Books Considered.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Dan.
Well, before we talk about what's in the book, tell us about what a performance psychologist does and a little bit about your background.
Certainly. My job is under the radar, so I do have to explain what I do a lot. So really, I'm a psychologist. I specialize in performance. So really what I do is I help people learn to control their emotions when they feel pressure. So, most people are doing very well in their lives. Thank you very much. But we all have certain pressure moments when it comes to our jobs, our relationships, our sports, whatever. And those are the moments that I help people get the most out of themselves in.
Well, before we talk about some of the specific advice you offer in the book, give us a quick overview here. What are people going to find?
They're going to find a section on myths. I like to bust the myths that are out there in terms of what it takes to perform successfully. There's a lot of things out there that people, we've grown up with hearing from parents, teachers, coaches that aren't true when you get into the trenches. And then you're going to find an actual process. How do I perform under pressure? What's a simple, effective, practical way to do it? I lay that out in the second part so that anybody can apply it to their lives, no matter the job or the interaction, because we are all performers in our lives. And then a fun homework section just to help people get to know their performance styles a little bit better. Because you have to kind of know, hey, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? So that they can adjust along the way and get the most out of themselves.
So let's talk about some of those myths. For example, how does fear play into this? Because, we all have a little bit of anxiety about performance. What can you tell us about that?
Fear is one of those big things that we love to avoid. People make excuses, they procrastinate, they don't want to deal with it, they rather just move ahead. And I'm always trying to get people to say, no, it's not as hard as you think. There's only going to be one or two things that really get in your way. Take a moment, be honest with yourself, face them. There's easy ways around these things. They're not as insurmountable as we make them out to be. So face your fears, everybody. It's not as hard as we think.
Well, another thing we're often told is you just got to have confidence and you can do this. But you say that's also a myth.
I do. This comes up in my practice all the time. In fact, it comes up with anybody I'm talking to. People love to talk about confidence. And usually I think it's because, people are afraid they don't have enough of it or they should have more of it, when really, in my view, it's completely overrated. Sure, we all love to feel confident, but do you need it to perform? You don't. You might want it to perform, but you don't need it. I mean, your confidence is one of those things that feels so variable. It can change on us from day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute even. And I would way rather people be able to focus on what they have to do in the moment, not on how they feel. So that is a big one that I would love people to tweak a little bit.
Another thing you point out in the book is that we're often given a lot of advice about how to improve our performance, and frequently a lot of that is bad advice.
Yes, there's, as you'd mentioned earlier too, just have confidence, just trust yourself, have belief, concentrate, come on, you got to win, all these things. They don't really help us in the moment get to the critical factor that we need to actually do. So I'm always talking about, if you're going to give advice to somebody or try to help them or yourself, make sure you can drill down to what you've got to do in the moment, whether it's at a presentation, being able to focus on the words that you're saying, or in an exam, slowing down and reading the question carefully. Simple things like this. Whether you're on the golf course, what do I actually have to do to get the ball where I want it to? I actually have to hit through the ball and get towards my target. Things like this. I want people on those practical, critical factors.
Well, one way in which people try to deal with a lot of the anxieties and things surrounding performance is they resort to superstition or they engage in rituals before a performance. Tell us a bit about that.
I'm pretty hard nosed about those things. We all maybe have a few things that make us feel a little better. Oh, I did well last time because I wore those socks or what have you. Those have nothing to do with how you're performing and how you're executing. So I do like to push people away from those things, because if you find yourself delving into superstitions and what you did last time, it's usually, in terms of superficial things, it's usually just a way to handle our anxiety about the potential results we're going to get. So again, I want people to get away from those things and get on to, okay, a routine would be more helpful. And again, a routine is just more focused on your preparation, how to loosen up, what should I be thinking of, what should I be doing in the moment. Going through a routine will help minimize errors, as opposed to superstitions, which really are just clutter, mental clutter.
And a lot of people look to others to try to motivate them. So they're seeking out motivational speakers. They're
Yes.
speaking, with a coach who might motivate them. And, I'm not to say a coach can also provide a lot of really good, valuable
Yes.
information. But if they're looking for them just for inspiration, they might spend their time better doing other things, like developing their own self-motivation.
Absolutely. As I say, you can't outsource motivation. It's easy to sort of push it over to a coach, a friend, somebody else. Well, that boss, he's not motivating me. If you do want to succeed or get satisfaction or get better results, and we all want better results, we really do need to rely on ourselves. And that can be a little scary sometimes. There's a lot of self-protection that goes on. And I think it's far more important that we sort of settle and look into ourselves and know that we're the one who has to do it in the end. So we better count on ourselves. So you better figure out how to get the job done without waiting for someone else to get it done for you. You got to kind of make it happen.
So we've talked about a lot of the issues that come into play that keep us from performing to our best ability. In the second part of your book, you talk about, well, how can we perform under pressure? And one of the things you stress is that you need to have a plan. So what do we need to have in that plan?
You need to have actually a preparation phase where it could be a minute, it could be 5 minutes, it doesn't matter. You do need to know, how am I supposed to talk to myself? How do I get my tension down? Remind yourself about what it is that you want to do in this performance, and actually maybe even have a couple of imagery clips in your head to run through what you want to do or how you want to behave. So I'm big into daydreaming. It doesn't have to be, really good long imagery. Just a couple of daydreams as to what you want to do are very helpful. Then you just have to be ready when you start. What are the one or two things that are critical for me in the moment? And I'm thinking of, say, an NFL quarterback that I've been dealing with recently. He just needs to make sure he is breathing as he is going to the snap. If he is calm and settled, then he can think. These types of things. But pre-planning what those things are, then off you go. Prior to that, of course, I want people to figure out what their hotspots are, what's likely to get in my way, and just, come up with a few cues to get to it when it gets tough. It allows you to think more clearly.
And for people who aren't an athlete, they have to remember that athletes put a lot of time in practice, working on their techniques. So, if you're going to make a presentation or make a speech or whatever it is you need to do in your job, it helps if you've practiced that, if you've thought that through and maybe given that speech a bunch of times to yourself before you step in front of that audience.
Absolutely. So that preparation phase is key. And again, you don't have to do it all day, every day for a week before. It depends on your personality. But yeah, you've probably got a talent to be doing this. It's just we have to shape the mindset a little bit to get the most out of our talent. So when you are giving that presentation, you might have the content down, but you might need to deal with the tension and the negative thoughts that could come in when you do step in front of that audience. So that's where the mindset comes in.
So tell us more about some of the skills you talk about in the book that we should be developing so that we can perform better under pressure.
Yeah. The top two, one, get calm and stay there. Learn how to settle and self-soothe so you can think. It's about getting that tension down. Biggest thing, which sounds funny, it's about breathing. That's the fastest, easiest way to get yourself under control. As I mentioned, that quarterback, there's 4 other professional athletes in the past 2 weeks that have told me, oh my gosh, I am now into this breathing thing because that's what's allowing me to stay focused on the field during my races. And it's the same thing for dealing with a boss or any kind of interaction. Okay. So that's first skill. Second one is, again, picking out those 1 or 2 technical, tactical performance things that you need to actually do to complete the task well. I mean, you would have certain things in your job too that you want to make sure you remain focused on no matter what's going on with the person on the other side of the camera, right? Okay. Then the third thing is some self-talk. There's 2 parts to self-talk: making sure you love your facts, knowing what your accomplishments are, and thinking about them a little bit more, because we all sort of drift away from those and don't give ourselves enough credit for having completed it before or done a good job. That's important. And knowing how to talk your way through a performance. It's not just you let it happen and leave it to chance. You have to kind of talk your way through something just to keep yourself on track. And then finally, a little bit of daydreaming goes a long way. Focused daydreaming, practicing in your head how you want it to go, what you want to be, staying relaxed, all of those things, super helpful. So just four skills. And you don't need to do them all. Pick one and try it. Go from there.
You mentioned in the back of the book you have some fun exercises for people to do. Give us an example of what people are going to find there.
They're basically just some questions to get you thinking about where could I be going off track. So there's a couple of scales in there that you can go rate yourself just to help you reflect and see where you're good and where you could use a little bit of help. And then questions in terms of confidence or motivation or fear, some of those myths that we were talking about, questions to help you figure out, okay, is this really an issue for me or no? And then it helps you drill down to the 1 or 2 things that, okay, I need to have a plan for this when the moment comes. And then you can make your plan.
Well, there's so much more in this book than we've had time to talk about in this brief interview. So what would you say are some of the key insights that you hope readers are going to take from the book?
You need to be able to shift when you drift. When you drift on over to how you feel, worrying about results, what other people are going to think, you've got to be able to shift back over to calming down and sticking to the do. So you've got to do the do in the moment. Those are the big things. You got to shift when you drift. And don't worry about confidence. It's not as big a deal as you think.
Well, to learn more, the book is Dialed In, Do Your Best When It Matters Most by Performance Psychologist Dr. Dana Sinclair. Dana, thank you for talking with me today.
I've enjoyed it, Dan. Thank you.
Now, if you'd like to purchase Dialed In, I've placed a link for you in the description below. And if you'd like to see more videos about books and their authors on a wide variety of topics, be sure to like, subscribe, and click on the bell to be notified about future programs. I'm Dan Skinner. Thank you for watching this edition of Some Books Considered.